Hey everybody, Brian here. Okay, so I am going to be showing you a video regarding the X2C converter from Excel to C++. I can only do this in Windows with Visual Studio and Excel for Windows. One of the requirements is that you need the C++ compiler for Windows in order to do this. Visual Studio is the one. So I have to do some editing to create and be able to build within um, the Visual Studio project, and then at the same time I have to convert those files over to the Linux or Mac OS X environment and build it within Eclipse. Now I'm going to show you something called Microsoft bastardization to the C++ language, and I'm going to show you some really key differences here. Okay, so I've got this new environment here with VirtualBox Virtual Machine with Windows 7 and Office 2016. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the X2C again. Now this is a standard Black-Scholes option pricing Excel spreadsheet that you can download somewhere off the internet, but I just want to show you how to do this. You have your typical values here. Beside that, you should put your variable names that you want to call in your C++. So in my case, we've got some input data. We've got P, EX, T, RF, sigma, and then the output. And these are all, okay, so these are the input. Okay, as you can see here in the little input formula bar. Now, once I move down to the output data, you can see that there's actual formulas. Now, a couple of things we need to identify here. Under your X2C add-in, do not use entity. It just really messes you up. What I do instead now, I think moving forward on all my future algos in C++ from Excel, each one of these is going to be a separate scalar. So if I go under edit this, which has already been predefined, you can see that it's a double. And then the name is P, obviously, from here. And it's the same if I move down to here. That name is EX, and it's a double of 50. Okay? So we know that. But also here is when you go into the actual formulas, this is a typo here, like this plus plus plus, that shouldn't be there, but it gets converted. When you try to build it, just screws you up. So those aren't supposed to be there, these preceding plus signs. That's an error in the Excel spreadsheet. But you can see here we have C5, that cell here, exercise price, times the exponent of blah, blah, blah. C7, C6 of those appropriate cells. And we can see the same thing also under functions. So these output data are really functions because they contain formulas, okay? So, and these are the actual formulas that are predefined in the formula bar. So once you do that, this wasn't working, but thanks to the vendor, Dimitri, at his company, he's really fast at fixing stuff. This wasn't working. This is now working really good. This is really important to see what will get generated. Okay, let me just give you a couple of walkthroughs here. This is really important, the global CPP. So all the objects from the input, the output, get put into this one massive globals header. So that's all predefined. This constant really will mess you up in your build. So if Dimitri's watching, under his settings here, let me just get out. This would be a nice feature if possible. Under here, under C++, if there was an option to remove constants and just ignore them and remove them instead of forcing us to take a look at this constant here at the end of your functions, the constants. What do I care? They just mess up my build in both Visual Studio and the Linux build or Macintosh Eclipse build. So, but you can see here all my output variables, which are functions, are predefined as well. under globals, this is the actual code. So all the code gets put in here. So here again, you'll find that these constants will mess up your build for whatever reason. So I just remove them manually in my IDE, Visual Studio, or in my Eclipse. Now here, I don't really need these. This is the entities here. I don't know. I don't really trust these. Maybe I can play around with them or something. But the standard AFX, as long as you're not using anything that's converted and needing boost, you don't need any of this boost data. These lines here you can remove. I've done it, but who knows? Depending upon your formulas. But most of the formulas I'm using don't use any real Excel functions at all. But if you are, you probably will need the boost. Standard AFX CPP. Okay. So once you've kind of understood that, you go into Save All. It'll ask for the target folder, and you put in C++, or we don't care about C#. So when we go back into the Visual Studio here, you'll notice here, this is just a typical project that I create. I was trying to create a library. You could probably do it in Visual Studio, but as I said, here, in these functions here, these are the functions I created, which were basically output data, all these functions, the formulas. These are them here from this point on. And you can see I've removed the constants as well, because those constant flags will mess you up. Also in the globals, that's the header for the globals. Then there's a globals CPP. Again, when you see the conversion, it adds these plus. They shouldn't be in there in the Excel. I just noticed that. But they will build. And the thing is, when you move everything over, okay, another very important thing here. If you come under these standard AFX headers and the CP++, notice I've removed everything here. I don't really need them, but these are the ones that get generated. So I'm not really using boost, so I remove them. But here's the funny thing. These header files, which are part of the Visual Studio, not .NET, but predefined, these header files that are part of the include build process, these are not the same as you would find in Eclipse or for Linux or Macintosh. They're totally different. So these will trip you up, and I'll show you the differences there. So do make note of that if you're going to port this code from Visual Studio and Windows into another environment like a Linux or a Mac, which I'm trying to do because I don't like Windows anymore. So that's that on the Windows side with Visual Studio. Okay, so now when I go into my Eclipse on my Mac, this is the test project. Right now, this is just an executable. This Eclipse project, the C++ executable. But what I've done is I've manually included both the files I just showed you found in Visual Studio. This file does not change, the globals header, but the global CPP does. Now, pretty well all the logic stays the same, or all the code stays intact, except for those headers I mentioned in the include. And this will mess you up, because here's what you need. C math and math, which are needed for the standard power, exponent, and log as well for these particular cases. So you can see it gets really confusing. But all I cared about was just being able to take the converted code from Excel into C++, but in Visual Studio, but then be able to move them into Linux and Mac. The build does work as is, with primarily the big changes are these, the math header and the C math. that are needed for, again, for the standard log, standard power, and standard EXP exponent right up here. Okay, so that does build, which is good. Let me just see here. If I do a build, so you can see it does nothing. So it's building, no problem. So there you go. It does work, the Excel converter, X2C to C++, but you got to make some pretty big modifications. Hopefully, Dimitri sees this and make some, hopefully, improvements as suggestions for me, for anybody else. So again, what are those changes? Where's my Excel? Here it is. No, we don't want that one. We want this one. Okay, so if in the settings, under for C++, there's an option here to remove or not include the const tags, the constants, as well as, yeah, it'd be really good when you do a save all that, I don't know, if there was a way to build, convert, and make it ready for Visual Studio, maybe like a static library, just, or DLL, and then just load up that project, and it's ready to go as a library DLL or a library as part of the save all conversion process. That'd be awesome. Other than that, good product, still worth the money because it's going to still save me a ton of time when I convert, dozens and dozens upon dozens Excel spreadsheets and worksheets. Over and out. Hope this helps you out.